Oh, good morning. We're all waking up after the Ross Coulthard Jake Barber interview. Excellent work, Ross and team at News Nation. I think Jake was fantastic. It's very interesting and it's good that he came forward. But I think some of the things that he says, just basically he didn't understand. So let me go through what I think is really going on. From my humble opinion and talking to a few close friends overnight about what Jake actually said. The two big stories in Ross's report with Jake Barber was the non-human intelligence egg craft that we clearly saw a video of for the first time, and the Panasonic Toughbook story on top of mountains, obviously linked to sensors. Let's talk about both of those stories because I think they're very, very revealing. Unfortunately, the egg is a human piece of technology that Jacob Barber obviously hadn't heard about. So a big shout out to Josh Bertrand, a Canadian researcher who told me and the world about aerogel vacuum buoyancy drones. So for those of you who don't know what an aerogel drone is, let me go over it. So the question, what's lighter than air? Obviously, hydrogen and helium are lighter than air. So is hot air. Hot air balloons, they fly because the air is hot. But there is one thing that's way lighter than hydrogen, which is the smallest element that we know in our universe, and that is a vacuum, no air. If you could make a balloon with nothing inside it, it would be buoyant. So how does buoyancy work? Buoyancy works by the compression of the air, our atmosphere, because we live on Earth, around it being more dense than the object. So something which is less dense than the air underneath it rises. That's how your hydrogen balloon works. But imagine a balloon that had a vacuum inside it. Well, that won't work, will it? Because it'd be as flat as a pancake. Well, the original concept actually dates back to the 17th or 18th century. A Spanish balloon maker said if you could make a vacuum balloon, it would be buoyant. And they're completely correct. But his problem was you need to contain the vacuum so it's not crushed by atmospheric pressure. So he proposed large metal spheres which wouldn't be crushed. But the weight of the sphere was bigger than the buoyancy of the vacuum. So it didn't work and was abandoned until the 1920s, where an innovative chemist came up with aerogel. Aerogel is effectively a foam. Think of a foam with contained cells with membrane walls that don't interconnect, made of some very light substance. We've all seen aerogel. It's very friable. It's incredibly light. It's often blue in color because it actually refracts light. It has a whole bunch of amazing qualities. One of them is that the cellular foamy structure inside it can be a vacuum because all the little cells of the foam are not interconnected, so you can make it with a vacuum inside and then it becomes lighter than air. Here's some carbon aerogel floating under its own power. No visible means of propulsion, no pilot and no engines, so you clearly saw it rise. And that experiment was done by the Department of Energy, the DOE, at Los Alamos Nuclear Laboratory, where the DOE are building aerogel lighter than aircraft. Now, they still wouldn't work because aerogel is bleh, it's very soft. But what you probably don't realize is that there is a metallic form of aerogel called aeroloi, using an alloy, maybe aluminium-based, maybe magnesium-based, I'm not sure, which can have this enclosed cellular structure of a vacuum, but also be tough. And given the right kind of tools, you can build big stuff out of aeroloi foam. Now, this foam is buoyant if it's big enough. It obviously has some mass, some weight, so the buoyancy of the vacuum cellular structure inside has to overcome the mass or weight of the craft. And so these Aeroloy drones, these buoyant platforms, are really big, often painted white, and ideally they are egg or Tic Tac shaped. I think what Commander Fravor saw with the Tic Tac was probably an aerogel drone. It can be launched underwater, rise up to the surface of the water, and has this amazing ability to shoot up because it's more buoyant than hydrogen. It tends to go up to, say, 60,000 feet, where the buoyancy is so little that it stays there and is useful as a long loitering platform. The size of the Tic Tac was big enough to actually also have sensors on board, so an organization such as the NRO, the National Reconnaissance Office, can use these as long loitering drones. I think possibly the Calvine craft was also a buoyant drone. It's a very sophisticated, buoyant type of craft used for long loitering surveillance. They have no engines, they're not manned, they do tend to float around, but that's fine because as long as they keep within, say, a kilometre range of what they're looking at, the sensors at 60,000 feet, which can do the observation that the NRO or whoever wants them can actually use. They probably have small electric thrusters, they can have solar panels on the top, and obviously the sensors built into them so they can hover. They're often white, so they're invisible. They can have a metamaterial radar reflecting or refracting skin, so they're radar invisible, and they're a very sophisticated, not classified, but very secretive type of observation drone that certainly many countries are probably experimenting with. It's also possible that the Calvine craft was actually built in Britain, but we're not sure about it because nobody's telling us what actually it was. But I clearly surmise what Jake Barber probably recovered with his helicopter and his long line at night, and we'll go into this, was an aerogel egg. It was human. It's not non-human intelligence. It's not a flying saucer. It's actually a test vehicle, actually not from very far from where he was using it on the range, as he calls it, because it probably was built at Los Alamos in New Mexico, and I guess the range was in Nevada or Arizona. I'm not sure. But it's all very human. Point of record to Ross, hi Ross, and News Nation people. I think he slightly messed up because Jake Barber described looking through night vision goggles down from his helicopter onto the non-human intelligence egg that he saw, and said that he flipped it up and flipped it down and it was obviously alien. And then you showed a picture of an egg on a sling with ropes and a piece of canvas, as you said, during the day. Well, hang on a minute. That means that it happened more than once. What you showed in your clear daytime footage was another pickup of one of these drones. If it was a one-off flying saucer that Jake picked up in the middle of the night, why would you have footage of it during the day being lowered down onto some vegetation? I'm sorry, as a film editor and a broadcaster, I immediately said, well, hang on a minute, there's more than one. But that's because there is more than one. It's probably a aerogel drone platform using Aeroloy technology, a vacuum buoyant device, which is, secret but not totally classified. Here's the patent, and here's some other illustrations that Josh Bertrand actually shared with me. So sadly, the egg hatched at home, not on the planet Zog. But I found the other story, the other big reveal in Ross's film on News Nation with Jacob, very interesting, and that was the story of retrieving the Panasonic tough books from the top of mountains that were obviously linked to sensors. I'm assuming that these were data recorders left on peaks around some secure area, which needed occasionally retrieving to get the hard drives out of, and then put them back, probably to spot meddling UFO people looking at flying saucers or whatever. That was his mission. But they discovered that the hard drives had been removed from the data recorders, the Tough books, and were put in a box 20 foot underwater in a lake. So overnight, I asked my nameless security analyst friends, what's all that about? And they said, bad actors. Either a foreign nation were leaving a message because they knew that the hard drives would be traceable, trackable, probably with some kind of tracking device. And they left a message to the United States by putting them in a box in the lake, obviously after copying them, to show to the US that they know where the sensors are and they're on top of the whole thing, which I find is quite worrying. Or they were UFO people who went up to the top of the mountain looking for a craft at Area 51, whatever it's called, and found the sensors and removed the drives. But they went up to all the mountains, which is quite a hike, and put them in a box, again, to show the US government that we know what's really going on. But I think the hard drive story was actually quite worrying. And either a foreign nation or UFO people who are bad actors. So that's my assessment of the interview. I thought it was very interesting. I think Jake is totally believable. I don't think he knew what he saw. And I think Ross did a great job. I think it was good. There was a few things that I was screaming at my television about. But no, let me know what you think. I guess a lot of you were hoping that the egg is a UAP or a UFO. I think my point about UAP from Jacques Vallée is that it needs to be way stranger than an egg, built of some material, something that people put strings round and a piece of canvas on the top and slung under a helicopter. That's not highly strange. That's not a alien technology. That's man-made. But let me know what you think in the comments below. And thanks very much for supporting me. Please check out my Patreon account. It actually pays for these videos and me staying up all night and VPN servers and all the kind of things that filmmakers actually require. Become a Patreon for free or support me by $3 a month or continue watching for free on YouTube. And please become a subscriber. Because of you, the truth is out there.